So what is the optimal God tier party composition? If we're building warbands, what colors are we going to take? God tier scales: 1 warband, 1 versus 1, 2 versus 2, 3 versus 3. That's kind of the core rules. We've played 4 on 4, changes things tactically a little bit. Maybe the board should expand a little bit more, but I believe it's doable. And we've gone so far as to play 5 and 6 on each side, just because multiple players were coming up. Hey, what is this game? These miniatures look awesome. The rules look awesome. Looks like a good combination of random dice that can be modified up or down. So you've got a little bit of dice control, but there's still the fun of the random. But also you've got complete agency over your warbands because you've got cards that you can focus on with synergies and use at different points. A lot of interest in the game at the club when I bring out God tier. Bunch of players, let's do it. So I say that because we're going to be focusing on the matrix of 2 or 3 warbands, official core rules. And again, obviously, if it's 1 warband, then, well, we don't really have much of a choice, although there is somewhat of a choice based on the color with what you want to pick. So now I'm going to break off in answering this question. Is there an order to the colors/factions that you would pick in God tier? We've got the Slayers, they're the red faction, the Maelstroms, the yellow, the Guardians, the blue, and the Shapers, the green. Just tactically, I express them as red, yellow, blue, and green. I've ranked them in a certain way. I've ordered them in a certain way because now we're going to break off 2 ways to approach God tier. And there's no right or wrong. The first is pure meta, pure crunching abilities, pure destruction on the table. What warbands or what build would I focus on if I was going to play in a tournament and I was trying to place on the top tables or maybe take first, second, or third place? God tier is an excellent wargaming system, skirmish-based system, very competitive. But likewise, with all the combos and the cool warbands and the narrative behind it, you could play very narrative-driven and not necessarily take the most optimal build and try to have some fun with it. So within that framework, I'm going to be looking at pure meta. I say that there's no right or wrong way, but if I was looking at pure strength, this is the order of the warbands and how I would take them. I'm not saying take an all-Slayer list. You could, but at the very least, when we're playing 2 or 3 warbands, optimally, I feel like your first choice needs to be a Slayer warband. You need to be able to put out some alpha dice. You need to be able to remove followers. You need to be able to knock back champions. You need to be able to stake a claim and drive other things off. Killing and planting a banner, Slayers are going to focus on that. You need that dice. So it's almost like within the order of warbands, start optimally, pick a Slayer. Second to that, and we're looking at competitive, we're looking at meta, the Maelstroms. These are the ones that they're not quite Slayer ability. These are the yellows. They get abilities for removing followers on the table. So now your first warband selection would be red. Second would be yellow. At this point now, you can plant the banner. They've got some synergies, but they're primarily buffing up their own followers or champions. But you now have 2 ways of dealing damage, removing miniatures. Ones that could focus on the other champions to get bonus points, core point plus bonus point. Slayers knocking out another champion. And then the yellows being able to get points for killing followers and bonus points for removing the followers. Now if we're playing 3 warbands, Guardians would be next if we're talking the meta. Guardians, they have a couple of buffs. They're not as quite strong in attack, although there are exceptions that break that. Half Tusk would be one of them. But they get some extra points for banner manipulation. So if I have 3 warbands, I'm focusing on the killie and driving you away and removing your models. But at the same time now, I'm getting some bonus points for my claim action, and I'm still offering a little bit of support. The last color that I would select would be green, the Shapers. These buff with how they work. and they increase or decrease the dice rolls and the attributes. I would switch and say Guardian or Shapers could be interchangeable, depending on whether you want to go into banner control, extra points, or whether you really want to work on buffs. In smaller warbands, playing a one warband at a time, for a while I was really looking to unlock Shale. So every single game, Wave 1 release, he's kind of the wizard floating on the rock with the Godtear kind of golem automaton type thing. When I was playing Shale in Wave 1, I was playing him 1-to-1. And of course, going up against Rangosh and other Slayers, of course I'm going to get rocked. But what I found was even in one-player games, it just doesn't have enough alpha. It's a support piece. In those one-player games, really taking anything other than red and yellow made things very, very hard, very, very challenging. Blues, maybe, but greens, no. As you layer on and as you get more and more and you fill out those base attack rolls, now you get into the buffs. And buffs are extremely powerful in Godtear, both to buff up your own or debuff. So that's how I would approach it if I'm looking at the colors from a pure meta. 3 warbands, I would take a Slayer and a yellow, or perhaps 2 Slayers, and then I would fill out that last slot with either a green or a blue, depending on what I was feeling. But that's not the only way to play Godtear. I've played triple greens, just trying to cast buffs and trying to bring things down. There's times where I've played yellows as the primary, and I haven't taken any Slayers. There's times I've gone all Slayer, which is powerful, but it leaves you vulnerable to debuffs and area control if you play 3 Slayer warbands and someone else has other support pieces. A lot of different ways to approach and play Godtear, but if I was looking at tournament play, that is the matrix that I would use, or at least how I would begin to approach it.